Hi, heroes. Before diving into this episode, I want to extend a gentle heads up. I understand that conversations around sexual assault and abuse can be intense for some people. And so in this episode, we're going to be discussing some sensitive topics related to these experiences. So if you are not ready for that, that is okay. You can come back to this episode when you are ready. But I do think that there's some really good information in here in regards to self-love and forgiveness that can help you along your healing journey. Sending you love. Hey there, money heroes. It's Stephanie, your host and fellow explorer on the Be Your Money Hero podcast. We're diving into the nitty-gritty of personal finance and having real conversations about how money, spirituality, psychology, and our life stories all dance together. This podcast is educational, but I'm not a therapist, and my guests and I cannot offer personalized advice through a podcast. My goal is to create a safe place for you to learn and get curious about yourself and expand the way you've thought about money. So if you're ready, let's dive in. Today, I have Janine Reed. Born and raised in Queens, New York, Janine is a fellow Leo, and her favorite color is pink. Janine has been practicing yoga since 2011, and she began her yoga teaching career in 2017. She completed 700 hours in training total, and she's studied and taught and has practiced trauma-informed yoga, hot yoga, chair yoga, restorative, and yin. She's a certified meditation teacher and Reiki master. In 2019, Janine wrote Steps to Forgiveness. She was finding it hard to let go and forgive, and knowing it was significant to her own healing, she chose to create a roadmap. Combining things that she loves, including yoga, essential oils, journaling, meditation, and a list to follow, forgiveness arrived and continues to show up. Janine resides in Colorado Springs with her husband and her two puppers, Oakley and Maddie, and her cat, Peter. When she's not teaching or practicing yoga, she also loves to garden, cook, hike, and spend time at the beach. Thank you, Janine, for being here. I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Stephanie.
So will you share with us a little bit more about your story?
Well, it started way back in the day on a Wednesday. No, I'm kidding. It started. So, normal life, parents are married, growing up. I have two younger siblings. I have two brothers. And then when I was 10 years old, my parents got divorced. My dad moved out. My mom was an alcoholic. So we had to deal with that, and then she also had a small section of time where she was a lesbian. And this was back in the 70s when divorce and being gay was not very accepted. And that was the first major two secrets that I had to hold. And so as my mom was dealing with that stuff, I stepped up and became the mother, and she allowed me to do that, but I also loved doing it too. And so after that came, just the failing school and doing drugs and moving out of the house and being a victim of sexual assault and physical violence, and just navigating through my life to become I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use, to become strong enough to stand within my own self. But I had to find myself first. And it's hard to do that when you live in a home that has such high dysfunction. You take that with you, but then also has all of these secrets that you don't know how to navigate. And then being told that you're not good enough and you can't be successful because all you want is attention. And it's just like a snowball effect from there. The only thing, I have three people in my life that basically saved me. And that was a neighbor that we met when I was 2 years old. She calls me her golden child, and I still am in contact with her today. And one of my mom's girlfriends, who literally was like the voice of reason during that the worst time ever, right before my mom got sober. and moved us to Florida. And then my husband, who is a very black and white person and and he's a only child. So he has this different way of thinking. So I've had all of that balance in my life and that strength that I got to stand on when I needed to.
Wow. You've been through a lot.
Yeah,
so
a lot.
What was it that I know from personal experience, healing does not happen overnight, especially when you've had people very close to you hurt you in such deep ways. What did that healing path look like for you?
Well, at first I didn't realize that I needed to be healed because when you grow up in such dysfunction, no matter what it is, because in my mind, all dysfunction is dysfunction, all trauma is trauma. There is no scale of who has it worse than somebody else. And so as I grew up, I was always told that, and the reason why I say that I'm a Leo is because my mother used to always say, oh my God, you're such a Leo. All you want is attention, blah, blah, blah. You'll do this, do that. And so I was always dismissed. So everything that I ever said, I was dismissed. I just wanted attention. I was exaggerating. And so when you grow up like that, what happens is that you think that your issues are so tiny in comparison to everybody else. So you don't really think you need to heal because this is how life is. And it's been this way. This is all you've ever known. And so you just learn to navigate that and it becomes comfortable. And then I went to therapy after I have two children. I have two girls. And I went to therapy and I was talking to the therapist and I remember her looking at me because I was just completely silent. And she goes, what? And I said, I cannot believe that I am so damaged, that I am so broken, and I am so hurt and have been abused. It just like all hit me all at once. And that's when I realized that I did not want to be that person for my children. And that's when it started.
Our stories have some similarities because I think that when we grow up in dysfunction or there's so much that isn't necessarily normal, or maybe a certain level of dysfunction just is normal in our society. That might be part of the aspect of it. And one of the biggest things that I had to realize before I could really start to heal was just self-recognition, because while I didn't have it as bad as many other people may have had it, it didn't minimize the fact that it hurt me and that there were things that I needed to heal from and grow through. And so it's that recognition that trauma is not a competition. It's not something hurt you or somebody else had it worse, and so it doesn't matter. And so I think it's that self-recognition that was one of the starting places for me is in my journey too, is just realizing that while something may have been worse for somebody else, it didn't minimize the effects that it had on me.
Absolutely.
So what part did energy healing have in your journey?
So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. My mother was very in tune to her feelings. That's probably what caused a lot of her dysfunction and her trauma and which caused her drinking from the trauma. She felt things a lot. She was semi-psychic, so to speak. I grew up with Ouija boards and essential oils and all the things and didn't realize that those were healing modalities. I just thought those were games and those were fun. And because I didn't want to be like my mother, I pushed them off to the side, but they were ingrained in me. They were part of who I was. And so for me, I didn't understand the connection between emotions and healing, energy, until later on. So how you feel as a person, or think about somebody who's like in a bad mood. So say you walk into a store, a restaurant, whatever it is, and the person behind the counter is like, hello, can I help you? Immediately, what do? 9 times out of 10, we turn around and we're like, ew, yuck. Like you can feel that energy. And once I realized that connection, that I could feel that energy, then I was like, wait a minute, how is my energy? Like, what kind of energy am I projecting? Because until you understand what you project, you can't understand how to fix it. or how to heal it, or how to rein it in, or how to let it go. And so once I understood that whole entire circle of how that all works and how it comes together, then I started looking at how to heal my energy, but also my soul, and then also my body, because it's all intertwined with each other. And that's how I found Reiki. That was one of the first things that I found besides therapy that enabled me to get calm and to silence my mind.
So for someone who might not be familiar, can you explain a little bit more about what Reiki is and what energy healing might mean?
So this is the easiest way to describe it. You go to a chiropractor to line up your bones, to allow your joints and your body to move correctly as they're supposed to move. Energy healing is aligning your energy so that it can flow freely within your body, so it doesn't get stuck. Like, how many times have you heard that women hold emotions in our hips? So because we're females, and that's where a lot of our emotions are held. And so if you open up your hips, then the energy can flow. And you could do that a variety of different ways. I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. And I think that that's just good background to have, because I grew up in a very traditional Christian household, and anything that kind of fell outside of that religious construct was almost forbidden in a sense, whether it was explicit or more subtle. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I've come to realize is that there are actually a lot of similarities in some of the spiritual teachings and also some of the Christian teachings, even though I've broken away from the traditional religious structures and have started leaning more into the spirituality relationship side of things. And I think in today's society, we expect things very immediate, and we expect them to show up in a big way. And what I did a study last year was, one of my big focuses was I studied the chakra system and Reiki and some of those, more related studies. And it made me appreciate the power of subtleties. And it helped me to start to recognize them in other ways in our society that subtleties are used in media, for example, and in advertising and in marketing. They use lot of those subtle techniques because those subtleties have a big impact over time. And I think that that might be what trips people up in some of the more spiritual healing methods. Is it's not you go once, you're magically fixed, and you just live happily ever after. When you go to the chiropractor, you get that alignment, and then you might feel better, but sometimes you've got to go back because your muscles have memorized how to keep those bones out of place. And so you have to fix some of those muscle memories. So will you talk about that a little bit more when it comes to energy healing and energy work?
So what happens is, it's all about getting in tune to who you are. And, religion, no matter what it is, and any other spiritual type of modality that anybody tends to tap into, they actually are all the same if you actually think about it. It is all about how you feel about a certain thing and how you feel on the inside. And on the inside is not only just your passion and your love and your drive, but it's also your morals and what you believe in, but then also it's about yourself listening to yourself. So many times we shut our minds off and we don't want to deal with anything. I am the perfect person of, if I can go 90,000 miles a minute every single day, then I don't have to deal with any of the crap that lives in my brain. And for me, that's what I did many, many times. So the minute you stop and you go, and the mind starts to still, then you're like, oh crap, what's coming up now? So you have a choice. You can sit with it and you can love it, because many times we sit and we we are negative about it. We are habitual about it. We are demeaning. We are dismissing instead of actually recognizing for what it is. So as you start the healing, as you start to open, think of an onion. So you start peeling back the layers of an onion. And the more you peel, the deeper you get into each layer of where you are and where you need to heal. So as you continue to do that, you keep tapping into different things. But here's the thing that nobody understands. When you peel layer 1, you get tools. When you peel layer 2, yes, you're going a little bit deeper, but you have tools in your toolbox that you can use to help you at level 2. And layer 2, and then you just keep going and going. So it builds up on everything. And once you start tapping into one part of healing, you start tapping into other things that can help you along the way.
And those things often happen very subtly. And so we might not even recognize it as we're going through it, that we're peeling away those onions and that we are getting tools. But if we take the time to reflect and look back 5 years, we'll see how much we've grown and how far we've come. And I think that that's a really important step in the process, is to take that time to reflect and look back and acknowledge yourself, because that acknowledgement of the progress that you have made, the acknowledgement that you have put in so much work, and also the acknowledgement that as you start to clear away those outer layers, like some of those deeper, harder things are going to start pushing up, which it sounds like that may have also happened for you as that forgiveness aspect started to show up for you. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your story of what that forgiveness process looked like for you?
Way back in the day when Oprah used to be on all the time, I remember she did a show on forgiveness, and she said, forgiveness is not for the other person, forgiveness is for you. And I remembered that, and I put it back in the back of my head, because at first I was like, what? I don't understand how. Don't I need to forgive the other person? Like, don't they need to have forgiveness? And the reason why I thought that was because I started to recognize what I have done to other people. So I recognized that I also needed forgiveness, but I didn't really need that forgiveness from somebody else. I needed it from myself for myself. And so as you move through your journey of forgiveness, I found nobody could tell me what to do. I'm a list person. Give me a list all the time. My best friend in high school was like, what are you going to do when you get to Z? And I'm like, I'm just going to go to A, B, B, C, C, and just continue on my list, because I love a list. And so I need a roadmap. I need a pathway. I need a direction, not to follow 100%, but to get me started, because sometimes we're so lost. Like, where do you go? Like, who do you talk to? How do you find your way? Which is why I wrote the book, because I realized that if I was to sit and go through my steps, I was able to go through every single thing and hit every single point that I needed to hit in order to find the forgiveness that I needed to give myself.
So with the painful experiences that you've had to go through, I've talked to people who, let me step back and ask it this way. What does forgiveness mean to you? You said that you do it for yourself, but for you, what does forgiveness mean?
It means that I let go of the bitterness and the resentment and the guilt and the pain and the sadness that comes with that thing that I need to forgive, or that person. That's what that means. And when you do all of that, you soften your heart and you let go of that dark spot that lives within you to make space to fill with all good things. And so it's just a matter of letting go of the burden that we tend to carry and the guilt that we carry because we always think it's our fault.
What do you think some of the common misconceptions about forgiveness are, specifically when somebody has hurt you in such a deep and personal way?
Probably that you are the one that holds the power to the forgiveness and not the other person. How many times have you heard, I forgive myself for the apology I never received? We put so much power in other people. I can't heal until this person apologizes to me. So I'm just going to hold on to it. So I'm just going to keep it there. We don't need that. That's giving your power to somebody else. You have all the power you need and all the tools you need and all the things you need deep within yourself. Sometimes you just need somebody to come over and just start picking a little bit at the little scab to just open it up a little bit so you can get some air and you can breathe and you can realize, hey, you know what? I can do this. I actually can do this.
That's a very vulnerable place to be, because taking back that power and looking into yourself is scary. What did that look like for No, it's hard. And I know because I've been there. But how did you start down that process of forgiveness? What was that first step for you?
I was tired. I was exhausted. I was exhausted of burning bridges. I was exhausted of always being angry. I was exhausted of always being depressed. I was exhausted of not stepping forward. I was exhausted of living in the past. I was exhausted of being fearful. And I just was so tired of being in the same groundhog type of day every single day and night. Something had to change. I had no choice. Because if I didn't change, then that meant that I couldn't, and I was just going to exit out.
So what do you believe yoga and mindfulness, these practices, how can they aid in that forgiveness process?
Yoga is all about bringing breath and movement together. We don't breathe. We don't take 5 seconds for ourselves. And in a yoga class, there's always spaces as you go through practice to be still. And when you're moving, as you're moving with breath, you're opening up your body. So how many people sit hunched over like this, or they have their arms crossed across their chest, or they're always looking down and they're not making eye contact. And that's all a protection thing. We don't want to open ourselves up. But in yoga, you have no choice. When you go into a back bend, you're opening. When you stand up nice and tall, you're opening. When you move through all of the poses, the entire body as a whole is opening. And when you realize that that opening is okay, when you're in your class and you just take that back bend, or you just reach up to the sky, or you forward fold, or any of those movements, and you leave class and you're like, oh my God, I feel amazing. You feel amazing because you let go. And you feel amazing because you breathed and you took a couple of moments of silence throughout your class. And as you do that, then you slowly start to realize, wow, this isn't really that bad. And then all of a sudden you're like, I wonder why I feel so good. And then things start popping up. Like you just start making connections to things, but you have to be open to it. You have to allow yourself that space to open up. And I think it starts with not realizing that that's why you're in a yoga class, or that's why you chose the meditation class or the sound bath, or you're using essential oils, or you went for a Reiki session. It's all of those things combined that over time you start feeling safe within your body.
I've also heard from multiple sources, and I think that is pretty common knowledge, that if you're about to walk into an interview or something where maybe you need a little extra confidence, like you stand in Wonder Woman pose, and there's something about that bodily motion and the way that you hold your body that opens up certain parts of our confidence, or it can release stress, and stress release opens up the more creative parts of our brain. And so I think that there are multiple things that are all tied into our body, our soul, our spirit. All of these different things are so connected. And so there's lots of different ways to look at them. And I love to see that connectedness between all of those things. And I think that for certain people who may be a little more skeptical of Reiki or energy work, I think that skepticism's okay. I am one of those people, but I chose that I wanted to see what it was about, and I wanted to experiment a little bit. So I was like, hey, I've done a lot of work to, make sure that my energy is in a way that it feels good for me and feels authentic and is the way that I want to show up in the world. And but I wanted to see what Reiki was about. So last year I did go to a Reiki session, and I was having some pain in my wrist, but I didn't really think about, sometimes when I'm sitting there typing, and I didn't say anything about it when I went in because it wasn't even anything I was even considering or thinking about. And she picked up on it. And so she did some work around my wrist, and it didn't immediately go away, but it got less and less frequent. And I was thinking about it yesterday. I don't know the last time I had a cramp. And so it's very interesting how some of those things can be affected and tied together.
Oh, absolutely. It's all one circle. It is all one circle. That's what it is. But you went in there, and even though you were a little skeptical, you still wanted to be there, and you still allowed yourself to be open. And I have people who show up on my table who are like, I can feel how they don't want to be there, but then I can feel how they just relax. And once you relax is when you open. And once you open is when you can look. And when you can look and be aware, then you can take the path to healing. And that's all that it is. And the person that never wants to come back for another Reiki session isn't ready. And that's okay too. That is okay. You don't always have to be ready.
What do you think are some of the things that someone should look for that might be indicators that their energy is blocked or off or somehow misaligned?
Just how you feel. How do you get out of bed? How do you look about your day? When you go to a certain place, how do you feel about it? How do you feel when you walk into work? How do you feel when you go visit a friend? How do you feel when you are just in your car driving? You have to not only compare the energy that pulls you back or makes you feel uncomfortable, but you also have to be aware and take note of the energy that makes you feel good. Because if you don't have a comparison, then you'll always live in one space or the other, but you'll ignore the other side. And you can't do that. So think about this. Think about when you go visit a friend. How do you feel during the visit? How do you feel before the visit? How do you feel during? And then how do you feel later on? We have friends who are just word vomit, who share all their secrets, who just dump on you, but never ask how you are. And you come home and you're just like, oh my God, I am so tired. But you never put two and two together. Because if you do, then you have to stand up and you have to look at this person and say, is this person worth my energy? Is this person worth my peace? Is this person worth disrupting how I feel? And the answer can be yes. The answer absolutely can be yes. But then you need to set boundaries, and then you need to go in with protection, and you need to understand exactly what it is. But if it isn't, then you need to pull back, and no one ever wants to be the bad guy, ever.
I think that you bring up an interesting topic, because I know a lot of people, my husband is somebody who's very empathetic and can feel the emotions of other people. And so how do you discern whether something that you're feeling is yours or something that, like you had mentioned earlier, where you walk into a room or someone walks into a room and the energy just immediately changes? We've all been in that situation. How do you tell the difference between your energy and someone else's?
Honesty. Being honest with yourself, actually sitting still and thinking. I love journaling. I dabble in and out, and many people don't like to journal, but I always say when you journal, you can write pictures, you can write words. Don't worry about grammar. It doesn't have to be pretty. Do it however it is that you want. It can actually just be scribbling. But if you were to sit and go, how am I feeling today? How am I legit feeling today? What is weighing on my mind? And if you can honestly sit and say, you know what, this is why this triggered me, was because it reminded me of blah, 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 versus, I'm feeling really good. And I wasn't really triggered, but I'm just drained because that's just a lot coming from the other person. And that is the difference between, and here's a personal example, is my mother did AA. I am not criticizing AA. I think it's one of a very good life-saving tool for those in addiction. And but there's this certain personality that my mom just got from AA that I just couldn't get past. I just could not get past like the wording that they use or whatever it is. And then I would meet other people that went through AA and they would sound the same way. And it wasn't AA from them. It wasn't their words. It triggered me because of my mother, because I needed to forgive the feeling of how I felt her sobriety took away from attention that I wanted from my mother. And I had to work through that. And that is what I mean when I say you have to think about how you feel with the person versus is it your energy or theirs.
Did you feel that understanding why your mom was the way she was and understanding her trauma and her background, do you feel like that helped in the forgiveness process for you?
Yes and no. Intelligently, I completely understand all of her trauma. And I also understand why she was the way that she is. I get why she drank. I get the decisions. I get the words that she used. But at the same time, it was really difficult for me to heal my heart because as a mother myself of girls, it's like, how could you do that? How could you legit do that? How could you sit there and tell me that you were raped? And then when I tell you that I was assaulted, that you chose not to believe me. Like those are the things that I had to work through with my mom. And it was all because she just couldn't deal. And I get that now. But, you know, another thing when my mom, both my parents had passed, when my mom was dying, she said to me, she goes, I thank you so much. She goes, you're such a wonderful daughter. You're such a wonderful mother. She like poured out all of this, all these compliments and all the things that I've wanted to hear for so many years, but I couldn't accept it because did you do it because you were dying or did you do it because you meant it? And if you meant it, why couldn't you tell me all along? So that was another struggle but that's me. That's not her. That's me. That is my space where I'm not willing to let go of the anger that I have towards my mom. And that's what it was. And that took a long time for me to actually work through. So it doesn't happen overnight. And it'll come back to you sometimes. And that's okay. That is okay.
If you're in that position where you're just so angry, I feel like forgiveness has to go through its own grief process, and anger is a step in that process. What were some of the things that you did to move past that anger?
Well, I sat in it because, you know, that's just what I do. And I marinated and I swam in it and I allowed it to be my identity for a very long time. And then, you know, you get sick and tired and you just can't do it anymore because it keeps you from living your life. I had to take it little pieces at a time. And writing helps me a lot. Also getting involved in things that I wanted to do. So teaching yoga, doing Reiki, doing oils, doing all the healing that I was giving to others, I then had to actually start giving to myself. And when I did it step by step, I was able to get to a place where the anger no longer drives me. It's no longer in the driver's seat. I have kicked it into the back. And every now and then it likes to go, hey, remember me? And I'm like, yeah, let me throw you some frankincense and then you'll be all good. And then we're done. So it just takes a while and you have to give yourself grace, you know?
It's a process that certainly takes some time and discomfort. Are there certain things that can be used as tools if someone's feeling like they do want to release this anger, but they just can't yet? Maybe they're feeling stuck. Are there methods or techniques or tools that they could use to help release that anger?
Well, a lot of it is honesty. You really need to sit and be honest with yourself as to why you're so angry. And you know, anger is just the top level. Anger is the easiest thing for us to do. It's easy to yell and curse and scream and throw things. It's so easily accessible to us. And a lot of people are like, oh, I get it. She's just mad at whatever. But when you go underneath the anger, and you hit that sadness and you hit that pain and you hit that mistrust, that is where you need to get honest. So I find that you got to open yourself up. You really, like, I used to dance a lot and I never really understood why, with really loud music in my home, because the movement made me feel good. I would pick any kind of movement that makes you feel really good, and then I would journal right after it. And I would journal what came up. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't care what you write. You can write, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my entire life, but at least you're getting it out. You have to get it out. And you just have to give yourself grace and know that it's not going to happen in 30 minutes. It's not going to happen in a week. It's not going to happen in a month. It's going to take a little bit of time. Think about how many years you lived with all of that versus today. You just need time. And so the more you do it, the more open you get, the more honest you get, the more you write it down, the more you get it out, the more then you also find other things to use with it. The Reiki, Epsom salt baths, meditation, going for a long walk, planting a flower, being creative. I think being creative, being childlike helps so much from allowing a lot of the stuck stuff to open up and break up and come out. I tell people all the time, go blow bubbles, go finger paint, draw on the sidewalk.
I think that might be one of the reasons why children can be so healing, because they are so free with their movement and the things that bring them pleasure and happiness and joy, that it's contagious and we can catch it.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, especially at holidays when you've got to go to those dreaded family things, find the children and go play with the children for 5 minutes. The amount of dopamine that you get that allows you to just relax. It like literally takes your nervous system from all the way up here and it just brings it down. You start giggling and laughing and breathing. It does so much for you.
So how do things change for you from a work or success financial standpoint or just abundance? How did letting go of that pain and the sadness through forgiveness, doing it for yourself, how did that shape your abundance?
I used to always think abundance was money and just money. And then I realized that abundance is everything. And when you are in a space of self-acceptance and self-love, and you start to take those steps to heal and take the steps to take care of yourself, the world literally opens up. I know it's so cliche to say that, but it really does, because you're no longer looking for like the dark cloud, like, oh my God, it's going to rain. Oh my God, my plants are going to get water. My grass is going to get green. I am so excited. Like those are I know it's just so black and white, but that is exactly how it is. When you look for dark clouds, you're going to attract dark clouds. When you look for water for your flowers and you see the beauty of the flowers and the vegetables and everything growing, then it rains a little bit more and the flowers are a little bit brighter. And as those become brighter, then everything you do becomes brighter. When you learn to tap into your inner self and your power within, you come out of this anxious, pressured, demanding expectation life. And you allow yourself to breathe and you stay in the moment. And when you're in the moment, you cannot turn around and live in the past comparing, and you can't worry about the future. So when you're here, the doors start opening. And when you see the doors start opening because you're open, you're like, all right. People say, oh my God, they're so lucky that they got this or they got that. Well, people work for things. They really work for things. And the more I got to let go, the more opportunities opened up for me. This podcast is a complete example. It literally fell into my lap. Like literally, if you think about it, you know what I mean? Like you were on that post, you said, I answered. Like it was like, just like that, effortless, because I'm open. That's abundance. To me, that is abundance, is being open to receive.
I think that it's also knowing your own worth, because all too often we tell ourselves no before we hear no from somebody else. And just in that fact of not believing in our own worthiness, we shut ourselves off from so many possibilities. Absolutely. Because if you had believed, well, why would anybody want to hear what I have to say, or what do I have to offer, or you're putting yourself into that self-doubt, then you're shutting yourself off from those opportunities. So don't do that to yourself, is what I am constantly telling other people, and something that I still continue to work on myself, because I mean, it happens probably most of us, is we experience those moments of self-doubt and just not believing in ourselves. And the universe has come back and told me multiple times from multiple people, you've got to believe in yourself.
So I had this conversation with my friend last night. I'm like, I can't believe I got nothing to say. No one wants to listen to me. I'm not smart. I'm not this, blah, 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 blah. And then she reminded me of all the things I have done. And that's what has also changed how I believe in myself as well. First, you have to love yourself and you have to accept yourself. There is no other way around that. You cannot fake it, because then the negativity slips right in like a speeding truck. That's just how it happens. And so I sit and I remember I can do hard things. I wrote a book. I published the book and told people about it. Like, for me, coming from a space of like not graduating from college and just like having jobs that the, corporate world would think is like not very important, I had to understand how big that was for me. And the reason why it was so big was because I stepped out of my box and I believed in who I was as a person. So every time I remember, I am a yoga teacher. I don't like talking to people in front of people and but my dream is to be on stage. Like, go figure that one. It's all of those things that you have to remember, the things you do. One of the things we do a lot of times in yoga is we take like this body scan, and we'll start from our toes, work up to our head, or vice versa, whatever it is. And a lot of the wording that I hear, and there's nothing wrong with it, because I use the wording too sometimes, but what places feel stuck? Can you breathe into that space? Can you allow your exhale to just open that space up? I have now changed my language, and I now say, let's go through the body and let us give gratitude for every spot in the body that feels good. Because when you think gratitude versus pain, it changes. When you're grateful for something, you receive more because you're grateful. You're not taking it for advantage. And when you can feel gratitude within yourself, you feel gratitude for yourself. And that starts that self-worth, that self-love, that self-care, so that you can do hard things.
I think so that's one of the things that I've done, now that you mention it, is a lot of the accomplishments that we do have in our lives, we often feel like it was easy for us, or maybe we didn't work hard enough. And if it wasn't hard, it wasn't an accomplishment. But take a look back at your life. Have you had children? Do you have a successful relationship? Even if that relationship's not perfect, is it adding value to your life? How have you added value to other people's lives? Like, for me, it was, leaving moving out when I was 19 years old. Like, it felt necessary to me. It did not feel brave or life-changing necessarily, or any of these other things, but I felt free. And looking back, it was something that was difficult, and I chose to do it anyways. But just because something comes to you easily does not discount that it's not valuable and you're not providing something to someone else. And so taking the time and the opportunity to acknowledge yourself for those accomplishments that you've made, regardless if you had to put in a ton of effort or if it came naturally to you. Because oftentimes, what we are put on this planet to do, we were given all of the tools, the resources, and the wirings that we needed to actually accomplish those things. There's some roadblocks that typically stand in the way, some false beliefs, some, maybe some generational trauma that's come up that we're going to have to work through to really tap into those gifts. But you were uniquely created for an amazing purpose on this planet, and lean into it. And it might feel easy for you, but what comes easily to you does not come easily to somebody else.
Absolutely. But here's another thing I want you to think about. So that one thing was easy. So we feel that was easy, that one thing, whatever it is. But if you look back past receiving that one thing, Look at all the work that you've done to receive that one thing. Like, you've done work. And because you've done the work and because you were open, that's why it dropped, because you were ready for it. So it may look easy at that moment when you received it, but you've done work prior to that. And here's that post with Melissa and getting on this podcast is a perfect example of it. It looks like it was so simple of just writing an answer to a question that Melissa answered. You replied, I replied, here we are. So that seems very easy. You're just typing words. For me to sit there and tell somebody on this post that I wrote a book that I don't really talk about a lot out of fear was not easy, but that work that I did made it easy that I was just able to type it up. And then when you came along and invited me, and then I said yes, I did a lot of work to get there to say yes. So in that moment, that looks easy. So I don't want anybody to ever discount the work that happened behind the scenes way before that makes it look easy right now. Does that make sense?
I love that you say that, and I'll give another example. So I am very grateful for the relationship that I have with my husband, Joe. But in order us to get to the point where we have a relationship that people would say is relatively easy in most regards, not that we don't have some problems, but things are really pretty easy and great. I had to do a whole lot of work to get to the point where I was even the type of person that he would want to be in a relationship with, by having boundaries, by speaking up for myself, all of these different things that he was looking for in a partner. And the same was true for him, because I had made, when I was going through my divorce, I made a list of 33 things that if I was going to put myself through that kind of hell again, or the potential for it, like, it was going to be worth it. And so I made this list of all of the things that were some deal breakers and some things that would just be nice to have, because I'd get really frustrated and I'd just throw some frivolous things on that sheet. He had 32 of the 33 things. And wow. He had to put so much work into his relationships by understanding his own worthiness and his lovability and the journey that he's gone through to get to the point where we can actually be together now and help each other in our purposes and be able to raise a family and do the things that we're doing now. And so there is a lot of work that you put into those things where what you want can then become easy. So I love that you shared that.
Yes, absolutely. I think we forget to we forget to give ourselves applause first. We forget to be proud of ourselves first. Like, that's where it has to start. It really has to start, because that is what builds your self-worth. That's what gives you courage. That's what gives you bravery. That's what keeps you on that path of going after your dreams, not what other people expect from you, but going after your dreams, your passion, what you want to do in your life.
So I'd be curious to hear your perspective on this. So growing up in a conservative Christian home, you hear pride comes before a fall, and you shouldn't be proud of yourself. And humility is a really important value or virtue. I've come to understand a different aspect of self-pride and self-love, that it comes from really knowing your own value and what you can give to others. But what is your perspective on an unhealthy, egotistical pride and a healthy self-pride?
So coming from ego, you're always trying to prove a point. You're always trying to prove that you're better than everybody else, that you know everything. You're smarter, you're wiser, you make better moves, you do all of these things, and then you have to brag about it. And the reason why you brag about it and the reason why you're egotistical about it is because you honestly don't believe in yourself, in all honesty. And the reason why for whatever the reasons are that you don't. When you are proud of yourself and you set those boundaries and you listen to your soul and you follow your heart, that is because you believe in yourself, because you have healed, and because you're actually doing the things not just for you, but for others. Those that brag and are egotistical and have to puff up their chest and get all arrogant, they're trying to make themselves feel better. And so they think that by getting the validation from other people, by going, oh, look what I've done, da, 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 I've given thousands to this charity and I volunteer here and I've saved this person and I got this promotion and all those other things. Those that don't do that, those that just go about, they have that internal happiness. They get the validation from themselves. They don't seek it from other people, because you never get validation from other people, which is why they keep having to chase that carrot. They have to they're never going to catch it. Never, until they believe in themselves. And then you don't even want the carrot anymore. You're just like, that ain't even important. It's all about how I personally feel deep inside of myself. That's what I feel is the difference.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners before we move into our closing questions?
Whether you believe it or not, it is your right to be happy. It is your right to be at peace, and it is your right to heal. And it is available to you. You are stronger and you are brave and you are amazing just as you are. And as soon as you open yourself up, and as soon as you yourself internally want more, it will come to you. It really will. And you can change direction at any time. I am 60 years old. It took me a long time to get where I am. And I'm okay with that. I am honestly okay with that right now. And it feels so good. And everybody can change direction. Feed your soul first, each and every time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Where can people find your book?
You can find it on Amazon, or you can just contact me. I always have books at home.
How can people get in touch with you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. So Facebook is just my name, Janine Marsh Reed. I have like all different names. IG is Faithful Arrows 2, and TikTok is Boho Chick 2. So you can contact me on any of those. Send me a message. I'd be happy to have conversations with anybody. Introduce you to some yoga, some essential oils, get you some Reiki, do all the things.
And we'll get links to those things in the show notes as well. So you had touched on this earlier, but what does abundance mean to you?
Feeding my soul. It really means feeding my soul. It's when you feed your soul, you feel worthy. And when you feel worthy, you receive all the good things. But it starts with you. And that was something that I had to jump over and work through. And I tried to ignore, but I couldn't. Abundance is a personal thing, because what abundance is to one person is not the next person. I always wanted the money. I always wanted the notoriety. I wanted the friends. I wanted all the big things that you find on social media today and on TV back in my day. And now I just abundantly want self-love and self-care, because and know that I am an amazing human being as I am, because once I have that, everything else just comes. It literally just flows.
I like that. What is some of the best advice you've ever received?
It's not my fault. What happened to me is not my fault, but it is my job to not let it drive me. And that it will happen as soon as I am ready. But I have to be honest. In yoga, we have sankalpas, which is like your mission statement, so to speak. And mine is, I am truth, I am peace, I am love, and I am me. Because without truth, you can't have peace. Without peace, you can't have love. Without love, you cannot be yourself. And I stand by that.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation.
Yes. It was so fun. Thank you so much.
As we wrap up this episode of Be Your Money Hero, remember that your financial journey is a path of self-discovery. If you have questions that you would like answered on the show, please submit them to info@beyourmoneyhero.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, share your thoughts and insights with our growing community. Subscribe for more empowering discussions. And always remember, you have the power to be your money hero. Until next time, keep growing, money heroes.